It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And I'm really burned. I'm fried this Friday. Fried. And Scout's right here sitting on my USB hub, so if I lose audio during this, that's why. Hi, Snorlax. Hi. Cthulhu, like, why are you super hiding? Cthulhu, come out. Somebody come and play. There we go. This is getting very weird. Very weird polka dot door. This is what happens when Leanna is fried. It becomes fucked up polka dot door stuff of nightmares. How do you do? Pokeroo. Anyway, okay. So don't judge, Scout. It was a very, very busy week in terms of It's Not Therapy and Leanna Cares. And I have been getting referred to me a lot of like increasingly serious trauma clients. And so one of the things I'm going to be adding based on that and the feedback from patrons and so on during the week is some seminars on trauma and a few other issues. But more on that in a bit as we get into comments. But trauma seminars are definitely coming in the new year because one of the things we identified is that we've got to build more trust for people before people feel comfortable like showing people hearing their voice and seeing their face, on a camera. And so the ability to submit questions in advance or communicate via chat with a screen name in a workshop type format is something we're going to try. So this is what your support goes to. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. There have been quite a few people this month who have been in pretty severe distress who, couldn't afford it right away. And I was able to go, don't worry about it. We're good because of your guys' support. So, you guys are keeping some people going in a really weird way. Bye, Scout. There goes Scout. So let's get right into your comments because, again, I'm fried. I'm slamming this together between things. And I want to get to as many comments as possible. So I'm going to start with the intellectual. Well, no, I'll start with the God of War stuff and then do the Wellness Wednesday stuff. Bear with me. I'm fried. The one comment that jumped up is said when I talked about that cycle that people described of starting to tell people they're fine because they didn't want to go through that cycle of unpacking case history in therapy again and again and again and again and again. That hit a nerve with quite a few people, and people were like, no, I'm just fine, even though they weren't fine. And that's one of the reasons I started It's Not Therapy. That's part of the reason I started sort of my alternative model of peer counseling because, different strokes for different folks. And that was something, when I was in and out of therapy by the time I was 15 to the time I was 30 something. 2014, so older than 30, well, 30 something. But yeah, that was a thing that really wore me out too. And that's been something that, another thing I try to do is if something's really serious, I limit it to a portion of the session instead of the whole session. At the end, it's just, so, let's talk about something fun you like. So it's, it's kind of like the hero's journey. You go in, you come out, leave people with a laugh and a smile instead of just, that whole, oh, you're unpacking horrible trauma. And then it's, okay, it's time to stop. I hated that. So, letting people have that lift before they have to go back into their lives is another thing I feel very, very strongly about having been through the system. And there was a lot of comments about the stuff I said about men struggling to open up because, the minute they start opening up, they're shamed. And that's why we're trying to do, we're not, we discovered the word support plays really badly. So we're going to do some sort of men's something. We got to figure out what to call it so it doesn't hit that button, right? We're still working on it. Same with the LGBTQ plus stuff, because here's a comment I got this week. I'm usually hesitant to seek therapy because I'm gay in a conservative part of Texas where things have become decidedly more hostile towards the LGBT, there we go, community. Also, I had a bad experience with a faith-based counselor in the past. I know my trauma stems from homophobic Christian doctrine and being exposed to end times theology at a very young age. I was scared to death of the rapture and whether I'd go to heaven or hell. I've been looking for someone I can talk about those fears with, but part of me doesn't trust anyone around here to take it seriously. Like if I walk into a practice and they have crosses on the wall or Christian music playing in the waiting room, that tells me all I need to know and I'm out of there. And that's why we want to do like peer-to-peer stuff where people who have been through that same experience or a version of it can, be there and make somebody feel less alone. That's what it's all about, because it's getting really real in parts of the US and then the UK, and people need people to talk to. I am a big believer in talking to people who don't jump all over you is profoundly therapeutic, and social media isn't the place to do it. People are just there to jump. So that's why we started this stuff. And someone asked about a Discord. It was in the Two Women Talking. I have been trying to figure out how to properly do a Discord server. And I'm going to need moderators. And right now, a huge problem because Twitter is melting down. I'm having to do more on Instagram. I'm having to do more on Telegram. I'm having to do more on all the grams and Discord. And it's what always happens when I spread myself too thin on social media. I'm dropping balls. I can't pay attention to all of it and do any work. Like social media management at that level is a full-time job. So we're working on that. And I want people to get kind of a cohesive experience, which means training people and doing stuff, and hence we're settled on the term bubbleheads for the bubble facilitators. Yeah, like see, I see the comments, and then there's just, it'll come in time. I'm a big believer in just doing the work, walking the walk until you get to your destination. You talk about how a lot of language dealing with emotions and mental health helps explain one of the issues I have with the whole talking about emotions. That issue is that it seems the only legitimate way to talk about emotions is to talk about them in the same way a woman would talk about her emotions. Any expression of an emotion in a masculine way is wrong. For example, me staring into campfires while I process what I have been through or talking with the boys is somehow less legitimate than talking about my emotions face to face like women do. As somebody who processes in open world games like Far Cry, I hear you. I think that staring into a campfire isn't much different than, rapid eye movement desensitization. If it works, it works. And I had trouble in a lot of ways because of my non-feminine manner of speaking. So I hear you, and I do know that there is a real punitive norm, especially in mental health that way. I'm seeing that. You are not alone. You are not imagining it. This is me validating it. And again, this is why we're doing the bubble stuff, and this is why we're going to be doing the seminars. And yes, the seminars will be cheaper than the bubbles, just because of economies of scale. Right? So if price is an issue, if price is ever an issue with anything I do, please contact me. We'll work something out. I'd rather people get some support and we'll figure out money later, which is why I'm not wealthy, but purpose built, purpose driven. A lot of stuff about, another comment here. Thanks to the compliment sandwich, I genuinely think when people compliment me, it's to criticize me. Yikes. Sometimes it feels like no one wants to hear men talk about their feelings, least of all the sort of people that complain men don't talk about their feelings. Like, the only two ranges of male emotion are toxic masculinity and loser piss baby. Maybe the third category that's acceptable, self-loathing at being a man and all things masculine. And someone said, have to agree with this one. People who claim that they want men to talk about their feelings are the ones that would either react negatively or even weaponize it. The more decent people usually don't shout about their virtues and sort of just go with the conversation flow if it gets brought up. And yeah. And again, that's something we're trying to address through different ways of doing things. Maybe I need it's not therapy thing. I don't know. Oh, Freud. I'm not even going to attempt to get into anything too smart right now because Freud. I tend to speak in, and I didn't realize I was doing this until people like, you never talk about yourself. I feel like I talk about myself like all the time, but I talk about it through Kratos and Beast from X-Men and Wolverine and Butcher from the Boys and a bunch of other things. Daemon Targaryen. And to me, that's shamelessly talking about myself, and it's not. And I have to remember that. So I feel you. There were a lot of people responding to the Twilight and George R. R. Martin comments. That's the sort of thing where people can feel their feelings and have their opinions. But this idea of prolonged adolescence in the Two Women Talking video came up in the comments, and why is it reflected so much in contemporary works? And I wish I had answers, and I don't know, because even the it's like publishing isn't catering to the market it has; it's the market it wants, and that makes no sense. But comics does it too. Right? Comics keeps doing these teen-focused books, but Western comics. But teenagers aren't reading Western comics, they're reading fucking manga. And yet they keep doing stories about 17-year-olds that adults are reading, and I'm like, that's not where my head's at. One person was very mind-blown by Frederick Engel's direct link to British first wave feminism. You're welcome. Yes, the identity porn was there from the start. And that was an interesting comment because this person's studying theology at university said, the more I read about the early history of Christianity, the more this Hellenization and Romanization starts to stick out and bother me. And I think to myself, how much Rome must have fucked up Western Civ. But then maybe I'm trying to rescue Christianity from itself, pretending to myself it could have been something entirely different before Rome did it dirty. The question makes me fear for my own faith because I have to ask if I've been living a lie, and I don't know how I'd handle another crisis of faith. And then he said self-gaslight, useful phrase. I assume he. I have a wonderful friend who's a youth pastor, Baptist youth pastor. So, commenter, there are resources if you need somebody to talk to that way. Yeah, the Romanization of stuff is a concern of mine too. But then again, I'm not Christian, right? It's like we got the Old Testament, no, the fucking Tanakh, man. And then it's like, oh no, we're gonna restripe this with commentary with the New Testament. And the New Testament informs the Old Testament, even though the Old Testament came first because Jesus. Okay, whatever. But then it's not even that. We get the King James translation and all this other stuff, and it's like, and I really enjoy reading religious scripture more as sort of a snapshot in history than, from a true believer standpoint. And I think that's partially why I come at it from such a different way. It's common stories that we can use to communicate And I had a lovely conversation about Norse myth this week, like a real deep dive into Norse myth, and it was amazing. And that's what common metaphors do. Um, so another person, quite a few really, really, I love this series comments on Two Women Talking. And I appreciate that. I'm sure Song appreciates that. Um, One person said, you two always manage to touch upon some hotbed topics with diplomacy, reason, and occasional self deprecation. I'm pretty sure Song is more the diplomacy, and I'm more self deprecation, though she does self deprecate too. But yeah, it's fun to um, be able to be my butthead self instead of having to be the straight person on that, the straight man. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's a totally different headspace, and I'm loving it. Um, and one person said, I wonder what the modern world would be like if it were required learning for schoolboys, teens, and young men to watch and consume something like Two Women Talking. There's so many basic nuances to the female experience via pop culture that would have gone over my head were it not for the series. Thanks, Leanna and Song, sincerely. Ironically, it's got me thinking about black characters in popular fiction and potential from deconstructing there too. Oh man, I would love to do, like, what the hell we call it, black people talking. I don't know. Um, I mean, I don't think it's just men that would benefit from hearing two adult women talking. Um, I think everyone, even teenage girls, hearing, you know, that it here's two different people. You don't have to be one thing, right? But yeah, I really do believe that there isn't enough cross-gender communication because everything gets so siloed around the 6th or 7th grade. And somebody asked in the comments, like, basically, is it nature or nurture that girls hit these developmental phases more than boys? It's hard to say because we can't brain scan children, right? But best understanding is it's both. I mean, puberty whacks the brain with estrogen and testosterone in different ways. And a huge thing for me is I do feel like, that whole everything teenage girls is like is crap, everything teenage boys like are dangerous. That's awful. And that sets people up to have to just spend their 20s undoing the fucking damage from that. Right? And I feel really strongly about this because my absolute favorite group to work with is adolescents. They're little fucking monsters, and I am there for it. It is so cool to work with teens. Now, of course, it's harder and harder to work with teens now because of all the shit that's going on, which really makes me angry because, after school programs and discussion and arts therapy and all that stuff can really make the teen years less bumpy by giving young people who, boys actually, their emotional communication takes a shit around 15, and we can't expect anything else. That's what happens. And so expecting them to be anything but what they are is not fair. And does that mean boys don't have feelings? Absolutely not. Having a feeling and knowing how to communicate it or communicating it in the proper way are not the same thing. Similarly, girls are going through that drama phase. It's dismissed as drama. Like, I'm making fun of it, but it actually causes girls in the 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, to actively distrust adults. And so we lose those abilities to get them on the good shit. And thank you for the person that said substance abuse instead of drugs and alcohol. I remember that. But yeah, I'm a big believer. And I mean, we can always do remedial, right? We can always do this work now. And that's where I can. And so cool. But yeah, I do think it's beneficial just for the record, for women to hear men talk as well, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what the two groups and the individual differentiation trumps group similarity every day of the week and twice on Sunday. We know this. And so this, what men want and what women want, this is why I want to do these discussions. I mean, we are working on something that we're calling Two Women Talking to You, which are basically the same thing, seminar versions, but you can actually come and listen to or watch a live recording of two women talking. That's something we're going to work on, possibly guests. I don't know. Song and I are still workshopping it. But yeah, I definitely think, I mean, Song's amazing. Like, yeah, I'm kissing her ass on YouTube. Awesome. But, Song, you're amazing. She really is a find. Please check out, the Callias Chronicles. It's going to be compiled. We're in the process of sort of editing it and getting it spiffy, but please check out her art. Check out her coffee if you want to kick her a few bucks. But yeah, the nice thing about ticketed events is she gets to make some money, as well. And I think, that's something important to say, has gotten such a bad rap, but I find it very, that's like when someone says, I don't think anything should be required because if people are forced to consume something, they resist. But the fact that people think it's worthy enough to say that is a great compliment, because I do think that a real missed opportunity in the way that feminism in video games and nerd shit in general was handled is that one voice became the only voice that was allowed to get there. And we got a very specific one ring to rule them all feminist paradigm in nerd shit. And it's not that. And I find it so much more interesting to have women talking to each other and having different views and clearly having, love and respect for each other and laughing about it. I think that is so much more beneficial to the dialogue than a one, presumed male audience talking to camera like a hostage video. I know I started with Lady Bits that way. That was a starting point. I did Gamer's Guide to Feminism, but as I have added layers, I do think that the discussion is where it's at. And I'll do entire frickin' roundtables about this shit, if I can. I want people of all kinds. But yeah, I love the idea of kind of anti-identity politics, I guess, where you get to see people of a group set as individuals. That is where I'm at. That is where I've always been with the work I do, right down to Ed and Red's Night Party. The idea that we had body diversity and women who looked different and sounded different and came from different views and had different intellect levels and all that stuff. That's very important to me, because whenever there is a paradigm where there's one ideal and everyone else falls short of that ideal, that's a problem. And that goes for men, that goes for women, that goes for, LGBT, I always switch that, especially the T right now. But it's blowing back on the other letters too. And that ain't right. At the end of the day, everybody's an individual. And I guarantee you, if I was talking to you one-on-one, I could find something to validate about you. Now, if you come at me on Twitter, disrespectful, we're going to throw down, because that's just fun. But yeah, please talk. Please reach out. It's really important. More Two Women Talking next week. The bubbles are still going. There is a writer's bubble next Tuesday. There is still time to sign up for that. It is 2:30 Eastern time on Tuesday, so before my Twitch stream. If you want to get in on that, There's still time. There is a classical music bubble next Monday evening. I think that's it for now. Oh no, the tabletop RPG bubble is 12:30 p.m. Eastern on Monday. So everything's Monday, Tuesday next week. There's still time to sign up. Link in the description box if you want to get in on those bubbles. Until then, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. Or you can buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.